As a kid, you got in a little bit of trouble.
I was bad, man. I was in a gang. I had been arrested like 15 times by the time I was 16.
Do you find that somebody from back then will still hit you?
I've had the same number since 1998. I see an LA number. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I pick up and he's like, hey, this is Chris Fury. Yeah, it's Jimmy Iovine. I'm like, what the?
You've seen the cover of Crazy? You know that you're on there, right?
Why did I not know that?
Well, I didn't tell you. So if you zoom in right.
Oh my God.
What's an insane tour memory that you have?
We come out the back door and these dudes just start offing shotgun shells, just shooting at us. We just hid behind like a big green dumpster.
Welcome to the Mike Squires and Friends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Squires, and today I'm joined by my good friend, Chris Fury. Chris Fury's upbringing in Southington, Connecticut laid the groundwork for an unexpected journey into the music industry. A radio station internship ignited his path, leading to marketing and touring management for Angie Martinez. From street teams for Mobb Deep to getting calls from Jimmy Iovine, Fury's evolution embodies resilience. With insights on networking and adaptability, Fury's message resonates, while he shares experiences with Chris Webby, Nipsey Hussle, and Scott Storch. As he navigates the music landscape, Fury's advice on building teams and spotting red flags echoes through his narrative. Through triumphs and tribulations, Fury's story embodies the pursuit of a music industry vet, shaping his enduring message to the world and what lies ahead of his journey. If you want to support the Mike Squires and Friends podcast, all you gotta do is hit subscribe on YouTube or download on your preferred podcast platform. The Mike Squires and Friends podcast is proudly sponsored by DistroKid. Looking to broaden your musical horizons as an artist? Discover DistroKid. With its smooth and rewarding music distribution platform, DistroKid offers unlimited uploads while ensuring artists retain 100% of their royalties and earnings. Join the community of millions of artists who trust DistroKid to distribute their music across major platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, and Instagram. Having personally used DistroKid since 2018, I can attest to its superiority amongst distributors. Collaborating with fellow artists has become effortless, especially with the ability to easily send song splits. With the DistroKid app, accessing these benefits is now more convenient than ever. Upload releases on the fly, monitor earnings, and withdraw your funds from your DistroKid bank. Additionally, explore Mixia for professional-grade mastering, DistroVid for music video distribution, and Instant Share for secure file sharing with collaborators, producers, and more. The DistroKid app is available on both iOS and Android. Download today from the App Store or Google Play Store to revolutionize your music career. Visit distrokid.com/VIP/Mike Squires to get 30% off your first year membership. Now with that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Mike Squires and Friends. Chris Fury, welcome to the Mike Squires and Friends podcast, dude.
Mr. Squires, what's up, my man?
It's been a highly requested podcast, dude.
Everybody's got to hear something.
Well, I want to talk to you. What was it like growing up in Southington, Connecticut?
For me, it wasn't like your typical Southington growing up as a kid. I think I lived behind like a movie theater, and at the time, there was no other movie theaters around, so there was a lot of cities, New Britain, Meriden, Waterbury, Bristol, were coming to Southington. So I ended up engaging in terrible activity at a very young age.
That's unfortunate, dude.
Very unfortunate. But it also was probably the best thing that happened to me.
Okay.
Really, you know, like.
Yeah, well, I want to touch on it, but I want to talk to you about your music industry experience because you got into the music industry around 2000, right?
Yeah.
And you were interning for Angie Martinez?
So I was interning at a radio station at Blaze 990. It was the AM station. It was like the first hip hop station in Connecticut. So, and then I was there for 2 months interning, and then all of a sudden they ended up hiring me and giving me my own slot. I was on 2 to 6 p.m., so I had the afternoon ride. And the first person I interviewed was Angie. And then she gave me a job as kind of like an assistant and then like a tour manager, and then I was managing her artist.
Yeah, so when you were tour managing, what kind of, what were you guys doing?
For Angie, it was very different because she was on Hot 97, so she could only be away for a couple of days at a time, and everything was in and out, in and out. Like she had popped on the anger management tour with M at one point on the West Coast and did a bunch of dates. It was Eminem, Exhibit, Ludacris, flew over to Asia and did a couple of shows here and there. So everything with her was very like, it wasn't like go out on a full tour. It was go out and do like 3 shows and come back so she could get back to the radio station.
Yeah. And who were some of the people that you met at the radio station?
God. At Blaze 990, I only met a handful because at that time, AM radio wasn't commercial radio. So, you know, you didn't get a ton of interviews. I think my second interview was Whoo Kid. But when Angie hired me, I was sitting at Hot 97 every day when I was, you know, 18, 19 years old. So I met everybody. Like I was there from noon to 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, you mentioned Whoo Kid. I'm pretty sure you were hustling his mixtapes too.
I was absolutely hustling his mixtapes. I was driving up to Queens to meet him and his wife and pick up mixtapes. Him, Clue. I distributed probably 40 DJs at one point. I was the key to like Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island with the mixtape stuff.
You've kind of adapted over the years where it's like when you started, MP3s weren't even like a thing. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm
really
saying. Like
emails.
So that's what like when you started it was like tapes and then tapes became CDs, right?
Yeah, for sure. When I was at Blaze 990, we used to get tapes and CDs in the mail from the labels, and then we would like plug them in, and everything was DAT and push play, and even early on. I mean, I was the first person I ever managed was DJ KG. He was on Blaze 990, and I used to take train rides to the city, and I would sit outside of I used to get the addresses from the major labels, and I would just sit outside for 6, 7, 8 hours, and I would beg people to give me vinyl for KG, because back then, if you weren't on a commercial station, you couldn't get vinyl as a DJ. So to get on the mailing list, you had to be on commercial radio. But first time at Puerto Rico Rob, I was sitting outside of Arista, like from 6 in the morning to like 10, and he like walked in, and I begged him for records, and he was the first person to put me on a mailing list to get vinyl for KG.
Yeah, and I know you've worked with a ton of artists at this point. I know from Paul Wall to Iggy Azalea.
Yeah.
You know, what were some of the other artists that you worked with? And what were some of the stuff that you were doing too?
For me, I just really learned how to do everything so I could always offer a service. The only way I could keep a job was to make sure that I could provide whatever service it was, right? So like I did anything from mixtape stuff to street teaming and marketing and promotion and tour management and, you know, getting CDs for people, getting merch for people. As far as artists, I've either directly or indirectly worked for probably, I don't even know, 50, 60 artists. I worked for Sean Kingston, like very early on. I worked for Flo Rida very early on. Paul Wall, Ray J, Jim Jones, DJ Unk, Red Cafe, Mano, Angie, Missy.
The list goes on.
Yeah, very long list. But again, it was either directly or indirectly. I worked on a lot of artist projects that I never really met them, you know, but I was responsible for a ton of stuff within their projects. So.
Yeah, you mentioned street teams. You were part of the street team for Mobb Deep, right?
I was. And Mobb Deep, Prodigy and Havoc, Big Noyd, Tragedy, they used to come to Connecticut and they would pass out flyers and CDs with me. Like they would hop out of their own tour bus with their faces on it in downtown Hartford and New Haven, and they would pass out flyers and CDs with me. It was one of the wildest experiences ever. And my first street team tour, I did the Bad Boy Reunion tour, and I went overseas, and it was a full tour bus of street team guys, just backpacks and staple guns and posters and CDs and stencils. I was a part of the Rockefeller street team. We got fined like $190,000 in Boston for stenciling every building in Boston, putting like Rockefeller stickers and posters everywhere. And then Rockefeller got a call the day after Jammin' 94.5 Summer Jam. They got fined like $190,000, and it was like 24 of us.
That's crazy, dude. So how did you get into, you know, working with all these companies, working with all these labels?
I mean, early on, it was just me. Again, I used to take a $14 train to the city, and I would just hang outside of record labels. And I would meet record breakers and people in marketing and A&Rs and keep contacts. And then from there, I mean, Angie hired me, you know, so I was at Hot 97 every day, which was wild because you see and meet like everybody. I mean, in the midst of a day, there could be 10 artists and 10 record executives, you know, that come to Hot 97. And then from there, I got my first big check from Angie, and I opened up a record store. So at
Firm.
Yeah. So the firm was a Federation of Independent Record Merchants. My store was called Quiet Sounds, but we were a part of this like independent mom and pop storefront that was, I don't even know, 40, 50 stores nationwide. So also on that end, I used to be able to move the dial for labels because back then you could get an album faxed to you. Like the barcode would come in a fax and then you would just scan the barcode.
That's crazy.
So I wouldn't even have to sell the album. You know what I'm saying? Like they'd be like, yo, Missy's album's coming. And I would say, Missy's album won't do that well. I'll order 5. And they'll be like, we'll give you X amount of dollars a month, scan albums. So I would just take a piece of paper and just scan. Like every time I sold an Eminem album or a 50 album or whatever it was, I'd scan a Missy album. Boom, boom, boom. So we were able to make, some of these albums chart just based on 40, 50, 60 stores scanning 10, 15, 20 copies a day.
That's crazy,
so, yeah,
dude.
it was a wild time for that. There was a lot of money in it. Even, too, with the stores, back then, they used to put millions of dollars into artists' face. So I had 2, 8 by 12 window spaces, and I was getting $800 to $1,000 a month for every 18 by 24 poster. $1,000 a month for every light box. So they were spending, big money. And I was bringing, major artists to my store in the middle of Southington. It was wild.
What's one of the memories you have? What's an artist you brought in a funny time?
Little Kim came to my store and it was wild, wild. I mean, but even Stack Bundles used to come to my store before anyone even knew who Stack was, and I used to bring him around Connecticut to get rid of his mixtapes. French Montana would come to my store every Friday with a new DVD, and I would drive around the state with him. I mean, I had Paul Wall at the store, I had Little Flip at the store, which was another wild day. Foxy I had at the store. I had a bunch of artists at the store. And I attribute that to Kingsley. Kingsley was he was the rep for the labels, and Kingsley would always bring them by my store because also I was the last store before you got to the radio station. So if you were on your promo run, you would drive by my store, do my store, and then you would go to Hot 93 and do an interview.
Yeah, so after you worked with Angie, labels would hire you, and you'd kind of be the point guy in Connecticut.
Yeah. Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island, and even, too, Kingsley would hire me. So Kingsley would get the account for the label, and then he would spread that. So Kingsley would handle, Stamford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and then he would have myself, and I would, handle from Hartford to Springfield, basically. There was another dude, P. Higgins, too, who actually ended up, going on to run Def Jam stuff for a very long time.
Yeah, how did you connect with Kingsley?
Bringing mixtapes. So again, probably when I was 20, I started to get into the mixtape game. And it was another thing too, is I was working for artists, and I figured the only way to get to the DJs was, for my artists was to distribute their tapes. And back then, you were getting $10, $12, $15 a mixtape. So I would go to Whoo Kid or DJ Enough or Green Lantern, and I would say, hey, I got 80 stores in 3 states. So I would go meet them in the middle of the night. They would give me mixtapes, and I would go drop them off. So Kingsley, I remember bringing tapes to his store, and he used to never want to take them from me because he was always getting them direct. You know what I'm saying? And he was always like, who is this kid, bringing CDs all the time? But I kept going, and then he just took a liking to me and kind of took me under his wing.
No, that's amazing, dude. I want to bring it back, too, because at the beginning of this, you said that you, as a kid, you got in a little bit of trouble, and from previous interviews I saw, did some knuckleheaded stuff, from my understanding.
Yeah, some terrible shit.
We don't have to go, can we talk about what you did?
Yeah.
Can we talk about what you did, and then how you bounced back from that?
You mean prior to music?
Yeah, prior to music, and,
I was bad, man. I was in a gang by the time I was 13.
That's crazy. I didn't know this about you. They didn't show that in all the other interviews.
Yeah, nah, I never really talked about it. But I had been arrested 15 times by the time I was 16.
Wow, dude.
A lot of just knucklehead dumb shit, whether it was tagging or graffiti or stolen cars or stolen bikes, or, I used to steal cell phones from people's lockers or beepers, and fights. Weed. I used to get caught with weed all the time.
Yeah.
But then I was with a couple of dudes that were older than me that had already done time and did some knucklehead shit. We got involved in a home invasion, and it didn't go so well. So I ended up getting 5 years, but I did 22 months. But the dudes that I got locked up with, they took the blame for guns and the drugs and even the home invasion. They took the majority of the blame. I went to jail in 97, and I only did 22 months. The other 2 dudes, one did 11 years and one did 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was, it was some pretty serious charges. But And then after that, really, I just realized that jail was not for me. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I said that it was probably the best thing that happened to me, because I've never been arrested since. You know what I'm saying? So, like, after that, when I got out, I started at Tunxus. I started going to college. I played baseball in school for a little bit. And then I got an internship at the radio station. I quit school, and that was it.
Yeah, because when you said all that, dude, because, you know, I've met you years after that, right?
Yeah.
You know, even hearing that from you, it's like I would have never guessed, because to me, you're the dad on tour, right? You're the most responsible one in my eyes.
Yeah.
So, no, it's good. So, when you started working at the radio station, you know, were there still were people still pressing you from your old life to try to get back into some of those things, or by that point?
I was still selling a lot of weed at that point, because that was the only way to make money. I mean, I didn't make money in music for probably 2 years in, 3 years in. You know what I'm saying? I was still hustling weed, but not really. Like, once I got out, I kind of cut all ties. But it all ended up, once I got into music, it kind of became tenfold, because I was going back and dealing with a lot of the street dudes and a lot of the drug dealer dudes in music locally at the time. You know what I'm saying? So it all kind of played a
crossover, the Venn diagram.
Back. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it to music, dude. Let's get money. Money.
Mook and Fair.
Yeah, dude.
They're my favorite, man.
Dude, I was watching the music video today for Let's Get Money, dude. Yeah. I saw a Chris Fury cameo,
I had
dude.
a quick cameo in that. I had a lot of quick cameos in videos early on in my career, but then I didn't want no part of it.
But that video looked like so much fun, dude.
It was a ton of fun. A bunch of green screen. And back then it was, you know, artists really weren't doing videos like that, you know, and we had a ton of fun. Them dudes were super talented. One of my favorite acts I've ever worked for or managed. And it's their story with me is kind of crazy. It was almost the same way with Anoyd, but their old manager had popped down to my music store. And he was a cook at Chili's on Queen Street in Southington. And he came in and was like, yo, I got these dudes. He brought me this whole press kit. It was in like a folder, all kind, you know, like the old press kits.
Yeah. And you were very respectful with that press kit.
I was not. I threw it out.
I know you did. You ripped it up, dude.
I threw it out. I literally, the dude left my store, and at that time, this is 2007, I was road managing Paul Wall, and I had just come off a tour with him. I was on tour with him for a minute because he had this crazy run. And I just didn't really think nothing of it. I kind of just was like, never listened to it, never looked at it, never nothing. And then I ended up going out with Ray J for a little bit, and I came home, and K-Dub and Big Man from Hot 93, they invited me to this. They were doing they did like a local concert series that was on the Connecticut River in Hartford. And K-Dub was like, yo, you got to come out, check us out, like come see the show. And it was outside like an amphitheater. And then as soon as I got there, Dub was like, yo, watch these two kids that come out next. They're crazy. They're so dope. He's like, they can perform. They got records. And it was Mook and Fair. And I heard one record and was like, oh, I need these guys. I called them the same day. I got a hold of them, and they came down to meet me at my store probably 2 days later, and I signed them to a management deal.
Amazing, dude.
Yeah.
You brought up Ray J briefly. Is that how the record with Mook and Fair and Ray J came together?
Yeah. They, I had been working with Ray J for years on and off, and then after the Who's Your Daddy record did so well, we ended up going to get Ray J, and that was a whole trying to shoot that video in Miami with him. Ray is like a true Hollywood kid, in and out, late for everything, on time for nothing, you know, very bougie, very Hollywoodish. You know, we rented out the whole Gansevoort. We rented out the rooftop of the Gansevoort. Again, at that time, for some Connecticut kids to be doing something like that was wild.
Yeah, dude.
It was wild.
And I want to talk about the Let's Get Money song, too, because I was listening to it, and that samples T-Pain.
Oh, yeah.
Was that cleared? Mm-mm. Okay.
Never cleared it, which is why we never made that record took off on radio in Connecticut, but we never went nationwide with it because we knew that we weren't going to get away with the sample. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and crazy story at that time they had a record done with Flo Rida. They had a record done with Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars was a part of this writing team called the Weebleys, and they were out of Florida, and they had a record with Bruno on the hook, but no one even knew who Bruno was. Like, he was just a writer at that time. And then by the time he went to clear it, Bruno had kind of started to take off, but he had gotten like a DWI and got arrested for drinking, and the record was all about drinking.
So it was just poor timing.
And they wouldn't clear it. They basically said they would never let him be on the record, so we had to like scrap that record.
Yeah.
But Mook and Fair had a lot of big records with some. They had some records done by Jim Johnson early on. Again, Jim was at the time Apple Bottom Jeans and all of that stuff, you know, and that's kind of how that happened with Flo Rida. Was Jim Johnson was doing a bunch of stuff with Flo Rida, and I was working with Flo at the time, so you know.
A lot of cool stuff, dude.
A lot of cool stuff.
Mook and Fair also opened up for Lil Wayne, like a peak prime Lil Wayne, dude.
Yeah, that was a big one. That was during the Pac days. But I was working with Dreammakers, sorry. They were like a concert promotion company, and I got them on a couple of Lil Wayne shows, which was a very big deal at the time.
Yeah. Do you have any memories from those shows that you could share?
Wayne was insane. He was incredibly dialed in, but incredibly high all the time. You know what I'm saying? But he was pretty easy to work with. The shows were all wild. To me, that was the first time I had done like arena shows. You know what I'm saying? So just being able to like, and Pac used to send us out to the city. So like if we were doing a arena show in West Virginia, I would go live in West Virginia for 3 months. If we were doing something in Sacramento, I would go live in Sacramento for 3 months. And he would put me up in like a crib, and then I would just like go out to the market and reach out to radio and find the DJs and find local promoters and like basically put our stamp on the ground wherever we were at.
Yeah. How many other artists had you like managed prior to Mook and Fair?
I had a few. I used to manage this old Connecticut group, Crimson Dawn, which they were kind of like one of the first groups ever in Connecticut, like hip hop groups that sold like real albums. And then I had another artist. I had worked for like Sean a little bit early on, and like Mano and Red Cafe, kind of when he first started to bubble, but not a ton. Probably like a good 6 or 7 I had managed or co-managed or tour managed before Mook and Fair. I used to manage too a girl named Janessa Monique, and she ended up on Making the Band. She was the last girl eliminated before Sarah Stokes. It was her and Sarah Stokes. So that was with Frederick and Choppa, and she kind of came down to the final. She was about to be the girl picked, but it didn't pan out that way. So
yeah,
but she was another one. She was from like New Britain or Bristol. She was Italian and Puerto Rican. Short, bright eyes, and she had a lot of contacts too. She was super close with like Fab and Clue and Nas. I mean, like I remember going to like a Grammy party and Nas like came to the door to get her.
That's insane.
She was super close with Alchemist and like Prodigy and Havoc. That was another. She helped me like build that relationship with them through her. So.
When does your career transition when you start going to these Grammy parties and things start to level up?
Probably like 08, 09, that era. I mean, I started on early though. Like even with the first Grammys I went to, I stole a pass and went across the street to Kinko's across from the Staples Center and like printed a pass and got into the Grammys.
Insane.
And then like, I would just go out to the Grammys. I would get hired by labels to do like street team stuff or to move around with an artist and bring them to do a press run. And then I would just finagle my way, like South by Southwest. I would go down there with no plan. And I would end up at every major. Me and Dana, Semi almost, he couldn't even hop the fence, but we hopped the fence to get into this like DJ ski party. But like there was a lot of sneaking into parties, a lot of like pretending to be somebody I wasn't. I'm even going back to early on to try and get with some of the bigger DJs, Flex, Envy, Camilo. I bought a Def Jam bag that was gifted to a record store in Connecticut, like from Def Jam, because he used to buy vinyls and stuff. And he sold me the bag for $30. And I would go to his store and I would buy white label vinyls and I'd put them in the bag and I would go to the city and I would sit outside of the tunnel. I would sit outside of Envy. I would sit outside of all these nightclubs and I would be like, hey, I'm here with Def Jam, 18, 19, 20 years old. I'm here with Def Jam. I got records for Funk Flex. And they would just let me right in the club. And I would go up to the DJ booth. Flex is in there. Everybody's in there. And I'm just sitting in the corner, and nobody would know who I was, but everybody thought I belonged there because I had a Def Jam bag.
Do you think that would work today, or do you think it was part of the time?
It was part of the time. Today, everybody knows somebody. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's trying to find a way. But back then, like, you couldn't just get a Def Jam bag. You didn't just know Flex or just know Envy. They weren't accessible. You know what I'm saying? Like, in order to meet these people, you had to physically meet them and build like a rapport. I would be in the city 5, 6, 7 days a week. You know, like if All-Star Weekend, I would drive to Philly, drive to Atlanta, and I would hang out in front of everybody. You know, that was the only way to really meet anyone. You know what I'm saying? So it was a different time. You couldn't just email somebody or reach out on social media. There was none of that. So you really had to be there, which is why, too, my relationships run so deep because, you know, I was face-to-face with people for a very long time. You know, like even when I was with Angie, we used to go after the show at Hot 97, we would go back to the heavy hitters office, and everybody would be there all night. It would be like Enough, Camilo, Doo-Wop, Cam, Jim. I mean, listen, I remember Jim Jones coming to the office every day and telling me like, yo, I need you to take these Dipset mixtapes. I need you to take these Dips. He would call me every day, like Dipset. And at the time, it wasn't really a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they were just about to sign to Rockefeller, and he used to come to Connecticut and meet me and bring me Dipset tapes. And then all of a sudden, Rockefeller, oh boy, boom, Jim don't answer phone calls. But then again, you know, years later, I go on to start doing some work for Jim. You know what I'm saying? So it was a different time for sure.
Yeah. What's another opportunity that you had no plan going into that you showed up and it worked out better than you had expected?
I mean, maybe like the MTV Awards, or, I mean, even, you know, I was trying to get Sicario out of his deal with Elektra, and this was Angie's artist. And All-Star Weekend draft night, I ended up getting into like 40/40 Club and like being directly next to Jay and Beyonce and LeBron, and, you know, like, but I was out there just like wearing T-shirts that said like "Tell Elektra to let Sicario go." You know what I'm saying? We were trying to like bully our way out of a deal, you know, but the whole Mobb Deep scenario was crazy. Like Kingsley hired me to do street team work, and then to like be on their bus and passing out flyers with them was a wild MTV Awards. I remember sneaking into, I went down to the MTV Awards, and I was there for like, I was there for an independent. You remember Remedy?
I do remember Remedy.
It was like a white rapper that was down with Wu-Tang, and he hired me to go out to the MTV Awards to pass product out, and I ended up like sitting in the 5th row, like behind Justin Timberlake.
Incredible, dude.
Yeah, like incredible, like 25 years old, you know, like that was a pretty crazy one too.
Yeah. So I want to bring it back to Mook and Fair for a second. How was the feeling when Who's Your Daddy went gold?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. And that was, you know, again, like DJ Buck at 93 believed in that record, but he also seen that we were moving that record. We took some bread and that we used to get from selling mixtapes. We have vans that were wrapped, and we used to go out in the street, and we would have a map at home at the office, and we would put tax in the map, and we would send a team out to like different plazas and different cities and different areas and sell mixtapes. But yeah, we put a bag up, did some radio stuff. Buck supported the record, and then at the same time, the Melanie Fiona record was moving. And it ended up getting put in rotation, and then the label started to call, and Buck really was like, you know, these kids are doing their thing. They're really doing it correctly. And then I remember D and Shadow coming out to Connecticut to meet with us at a nightclub. And then a week later, they set up a meeting with Johnny Shipes, which is how I hooked up with Shipes. So Shipes, D, and Shadow signed Mook and Fair. So that's how I started building with Cinematic in them. And at the time, Shipes had Nipsey, Nina Sky, Sean Kingston. Like, he had a huge deal at Sony.
Yeah.
You know, so he was like the guy. And D and Shadow had their own label they just started. So they kind of brokered the deal and were involved, but Shipes was really the label guy.
Yeah. And Dana was an intern.
For me at one point, yeah. So Shipes hit me up and was like, yo, I got this kid, Dana. He's in Connecticut, and he does promotions for me. And Shipes had him doing like shows with Currency and stuff at like Toad's Place. And that's actually also how he met Webb.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up. This is the entrance of Webb, dude.
Yes, the entrance of Webb. And Dana had heard through the grapevine, because he used to go to school at Southern. He had heard about Webb. He contacted Webb. Webb opened up for Currency, and that was kind of their start. But yeah, so he had linked me with Dana and was like, yo, I got this kid. He's from Connecticut. And Dana ends up being from the next town over from me. But Dana used to run packs for people that were involved with Johnny, like in L.A., like Sean Kingston's brother used to run packs back to the East Coast, and Dana and his homies had like all of Southern lockdown.
That's crazy.
So that's how he met Shipes, super long story. But so Dana worked with me a little bit with Mook and Fair. And then a few years later, he hit me just like, yo, I need some help with Web, and it was at a perfect time because I was ending with Ray J, and I was done working with a couple of other artists, and so I kind of just jumped right in. At first, I didn't really want no part of it because at that time, like, again, white rappers were like, I had a white rapper, one of my first artists, his name was Powder, and he was like a super dope rapper, but all he could do was rap. Like, he couldn't make a record to save his life. He was just very like rappity rap like that.
Lyrical miracle.
Yeah. And after that, I was like, nah, I can't do white rappers, because if you weren't M, you just weren't anybody. You know what I'm saying? And then I watched Web kind of grow for a year or two. Dana and K-Dub invited me out to another show at Toad's Place, and I had seen, Web pack the building, and I was like, yo, this is fucking crazy. So when Dana had reached out to me and I was kind of like in this limbo mode in between artists, I was down. I was 100% down.
What's one of your first memories with Web?
The first time I traveled with him, so I had met Web through Dana a couple times, and then we flew out to L.A., and at this time, Dana had really hired me because they needed to move around in the major system. Like, they had kind of got to a point independently where there was not much more to do. So they hired me to plug them with people. So I would travel with them to different cities and do press runs. And I was driving a rental car. This is probably the first day we were on the road. And I was actually like with Web. And I lit up a cigarette and I threw my pack of cigarettes out the window. And he made me fucking turn the car around and told me to pick up my pack of cigarettes. He was no fucking littering. But from that day on, I've been so much more conscious about littering, and I don't litter anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, that sounds very Web,
so much
dude.
like Web.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of cool, too, because you guys have been working forever at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's been, 11 years now.
Yeah. So another thing that I saw early on was a photo of you, Web, and Nipsey.
Yeah. That was so. I became homies with Nipsey. So I don't know if you dug this up, but so Mook and Fair had Who's Your Daddy, and then they did a remix with Webstar, right? And we got Webstar on the remix. Which at the time he was popping because he had like Chicken Little Soup and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and then we did a West Coast version of the record through Shipes. We got Nipsey, and Nipsey is on Who's Your Daddy, a West Coast
insane,
version.
dude.
Yeah, so Mook and Fair have a record with Nipsey. So I became homies with Nipsey, his cousin, Vic, and when they came to Connecticut, I hit them up and was like, yo, I got to bring Mook and Fair to come meet Nip. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm sorry, Webby, because at the time, I think Mook and Fair had kind of fizzled off, not broke up, but they kind of started to do their own thing, and I had just started with Web, so yeah, that was in Danbury. Yeah, I think it was a Big Mike show too.
Yeah, so you just said that Mook and Fair started to fizzle off. After working with them for so long, how was the feeling when that kind of came to an end?
It sucked, man, like, because I think they were so fucking talented. Like, Fair was more of like a lyricist and like a writer. Mook was like a swag rapper. Like, he could hop on any record and ride the record. Like, he made records. Like, Fair would like put them together, and he was much more lyrical with his content, but Mook would like sauce up a record the way I've never seen it. And they would sit together and make the most incredible records. You know what I'm saying? Like, but then, when you get a record deal and when you start to make some money and there's two guys, they lived two separate personal lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, Mook didn't really want to be out. Fair wanted to be out. Like, they started to go to the studio at separate times. Fair would come in and lay his records, and then he'd leave the studio, and then Mook would come in, and they kind of lost that,
the friendship before everything.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say, like, they're still homies to this day, and like, they're still loyal to each other to this day, but they lost that like camaraderie, and like there's certain things that you need. I mean, like, you have to, being in the studio with someone is so much different than like piecing it together. You know what I'm saying? And also too, like they both had personal shit going on, and there was bookings, and you got busy, and it's hard to keep two people in sync. That's kind of the reason you don't really see groups anymore. It's fucking difficult to keep multiple people.
Listen, man, I feel it.
You know.
I feel it.
You know.
But you know what? Chris Fury once said, "If you doubt me, that's your problem."
It is your problem.
And were there a lot of people that doubted you?
Fuck yeah. I mean, I was a white kid from Connecticut. You know what I'm saying? Like, the first part is Connecticut, and the second part was I was a white kid. You know, so at that time, I found a very good niche. Like, I was able to go sit with labels and, like, you know, be professional, but I could also go to the hood and get along. You know, that's, again, too, like, when I was moving mixtapes, I was the only white kid moving around the hood in Mass, Providence, Hartford, New Haven. You know what I'm saying? There was really just me. And at the time, I was my best friend, this kid, Jay. We used to call him Poker Face, but he was the only other kid. So, yeah, I mean, nobody believed in me at first. Also, too, like, it's kind of a pipe dream. You talk about, like, knowing these artists or meeting these artists or going to the Grammys, and it's like, you know, like, at that time, you only seen what you seen, like, in the Source magazine or XXL or, like, on MTV. Nobody knew anybody who was involved in the music, especially like a kid from Connecticut and a kid from Southington. It wasn't a kid from Hartford or somebody from New Haven. It was like this rural white town. So there was a lot of doubters at the beginning.
Yeah, dude. And you've just adapted phenomenally, and you had New England unlocked. New England unlocked so much that you were at the New England music seminar.
I was.
On the panel,
I was
dude.
on the panel early.
Yeah.
Very early. Yeah, June Archer had done like some incredible shit and put that together, and it was amazing at the beginning. You know, the first handful of years, I was on the panel every year. I was on a couple of panels. From starting on that panel, I used to move around. I did some music panels in like Ohio and Atlanta and Tennessee, and like because once you kind of start into that lane, other people start to reach out. But yeah, the panel was cool, and I was on that relatively young. You know, trying to drop gems and all of that, and a lot of people would look to me because I had so many relationships, whether it was like with retail or it was with radio or it was with DJs or it was with artists, you know. So even when I spoke on those panels, I was on like a marketing panel and a management panel and a radio panel, you know what I'm saying? So it was cool.
Yeah, you also spoke to kids about following their dreams at the Palace Theater, I think.
Oh, wow. Where'd you find that one at?
You know, I did my homework, dude.
Yeah. I got involved in like this mentor program, and I went and I was speaking to kids at like boys clubs, and like they were like teen programs for kids trying to get into music and trying to be entrepreneurs and stuff. And I did one in Waterbury at the Palace. I did one in Stamford at the Palace. I did one at the Bushnell. But it was super cool because like these kids, like all the kids would then write me like these notes and these letters that would thank me and tell me like, you know, what direction they wanted to go in after listening to me. And it was a super cool point. I wish that program would have continued, but it lost its funding. So
yeah, you know, I'm gonna pull it back to Webb a little bit because I saw a photo of you in the studio with Webb and Scott Storch.
That was probably the best time of my life.
Let's talk about it, dude.
So at that time, myself and D and Shadow and Dana had negotiated like one of the best record deals I think in the history of music, period. Like we got him like almost $1 million for one album and one EP. And he did that album and that EP in like 18 months. So he got like over $1 million and was in and out in 18 months.
That's insane.
And owned everything. You know what I'm saying? So and we had gotten like a pretty big advance and then a pretty big marketing budget. I was homies with the dudes who owned Circle House Studios in Miami. One of the owners was a friend, again, that came from a Jim Johnson relationship, and I used to be in the studio around Wayne and them, and they at the time had their own spot at Circle House. BB is the owner in Inner Circle, which is like the famous reggae group. So anyways, BB was cutting me crazy cash deals. So we were like invoicing the label thousands of dollars, you know what I'm saying? And it was costing us $500. But we were sitting down in sessions with the crazy, I mean, like Rico Love in one room and Pharrell in another room and Storch in another room. We linked with this dude while we were down there. We had spent months and months down there recording at Circle House, and it's to me the dopest studio in the country, just because they're in like houses, like a mansion and a couple of small houses. It's on like a cul-de-sac, and then like every bedroom was a different studio, and they had pools and jacuzzis, and they had chefs in the kitchens. They had multiple kitchens in every house, and pool tables and ping pong. It was such like a homey environment. But at that time, Scott was just coming back. He had kind of like disappeared off the face of the earth, drugs and all of that. And we had ran into these Israeli mob dudes who like, who basically bought Scott's future pub and brought him back into the game.
That's insane.
Like Scott was down and out. And they gave him this very large lump sum of money. And they were like, all right, cool. Like, here's this bread, here's this house, here's this Benz. We're going to own your pub for X amount of years. And Scott, so Webb was like one of the first people Scott worked with when he kind of came back in the fold. And being in the studio with him was like the most incredible shit I ever seen. He's so fucking gifted, and like he don't talk much, you know, but like he was telling Webb, like in front of cameras, like, yo, I haven't felt this way since I worked with him, you know, like, and then the stories, he like the craziest. He's got more fucking stories than like anybody I know. Man, Fat Joe maybe has more stories, but Storch is pretty fucking close.
Yeah, dude. So from all your years of touring, whether it was with Webb, Mook, and Fair, what's an insane tour memory that you have that you just can't believe that this is happening right now?
I won't say what artist it was with, but we were in Oklahoma City, and there was some local rappers trying to get a verse from this artist, and the artist, he was down to do it, but the way it was, they wanted him to like go to the studio, which was in the hood, and you know, he really was like, I don't feel right about it, and at the end of the, so anyways, we don't do the verse. He don't go to the studio. Those local rappers open up at the show. It was Paul, Plies, Jeezy. We come out the back door, and these dudes just start offing shotgun shells, just shooting at us. We just hid behind like a big green dumpster. That was it. They unloaded like, I don't even know, probably 10 or 12 shots. Oklahoma City, like, right outside like in an alleyway outside the back of the club.
That's crazy.
You know, so yeah, that was.
What are you doing after that? Like, what's the rest of the night look like after that? Like, everyone was obviously okay.
Everyone was okay. It was just back to the hotel and like, let's get the fuck out of Oklahoma City. You know what I'm saying? And then again, crazy. So I worked. This all kind of went hand in hand. I was working for this label called Deja Vu Records. This Dominican dude, Mo. Love Mo. I still talk to him here and there, but he was a real big get money guy. And he fucked the game up. He did some shit that I had never seen before, and he kind of put me onto this. But so he had a lot of bread. So he had signed this artist. He would then that artist had a record. They went to radio, but he would basically go to artists. Like I remember going to meet Paul, going to meet Jim with bags full of money. So he would call up like Jim Jones, and he used to deal with Yandy, and he would say, hey, I'll buy 100 shows from you at $3,000 a show. I'll give you $300,000 cash. And he would send us on a fucking train or a bus with fucking duffel bags full of money, like straight cash. And we would just drop it off. And then just say someone like Jim, he would then have 100 shows with Jim, and then Ballin' came out. And then, so he's either then selling those shows that he bought for $3,000 for 8, 9, or 10,000, or he's doing the shows all over the country.
And he's making the money.
He did it with Paul. He did it with a bunch of Plies, Jeezy. And then what he would do is he wouldn't go to like, everybody was trying to go to like Chicago and Atlanta and Miami. He would go to like Fayetteville, North Carolina, or like Lincoln, Nebraska, or Oklahoma City. He would go to these like C, D, and E markets because they were easy to manipulate. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody was going there.
Yeah.
So he would buy a van. Like at one point, he had 20 vans all across the country. He would buy a van. He would ship that shit to like some random city. He would make me find the local DJ that was on the local radio station, and I would say to them, hey, I'm going to give you this van. We're going to pay for insurance. We're going to pay to register it. One side is Deja Vu Records with our artist or our show. The other side is all yours. DJ so-and-so with your station, with your club. And that DJ or that promoter would drive the van around that city all day long with Deja Vu on the side. So he had 20 vans moving. So whenever he had a show, he would wrap the van. He would hire that DJ for the show. That DJ would then play records on the radio. And it was the craziest monopoly I'd ever seen.
I was going to say, dude was playing chess,
bro,
dude.
He was going into like, Montgomery, Alabama, and like these oddball Corpus. We were crushing Corpus Christi, Texas. Crushing. Corpus Christi has, at that time, had fucking 10,000 people in it. It was all Mexicans. The radio station was in a house that was owned by a dude who owned a farm, a Mexican couple. And then they owned a country nightclub, which they demolished and made a hip-hop club. And they were bringing rappers into Corpus Christi, and it was wild. And again, Corpus Christi, like, you'd be able to get like 50, 40 spins a day in Corpus Christi for like booking the program director to fucking host the show.
That's crazy.
You know
so you're
what I'm
really
saying?
getting your bang for your buck in these smaller markets.
We were crushing it. But that's all. So like I met Paul through that whole circle. He had bought 100 shows with Paul. Bro, he bought shows with Paul at like $1,500.
Wow.
This was before Tippin' 4/4s came out. So it was like, then like grills and all this shit. And he had all these Paul Wall shows. And he put together this Fire and Ice tour, and it was Paul Wall and Tech Nine. And it was the first time I had worked for them. And it was such a wild tour. Like, at that time, Paul was like in the midst of just this huge run, and Tech Nine was like an independent juggernaut, which he was really the first time ever seeing like real independence in hip hop, So that was a cool time.
Dog, I mean, I'm just like here in awe, just like listening to these stories, dude. It's really cool.
So many of them.
That's what I'm saying. I want to take it to a time that we toured together, though. And this is something like, listen, I know you and I both have a lot of pride being from Connecticut.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment in Europe when someone in the crowd was holding up a Connecticut flag?
It was top 5 most memorable things for me ever. And the feeling was crazy. These 2 kids from Kerr, Switzerland, like ordered a Connecticut flag on Amazon or wherever they got it from. They brought these flags to the show. And we were like on stage, and we look out, and I'm like, Squires, there's these kids that got Connecticut. Squires is like, already got it, Fury, and ran me the footage, and it was the craziest feeling, like knowing that these kids knew about where we were from, all from somebody else's lyrics, who then had them tatted 203 and A60 in Connecticut and whatnot. But to see them like hold that flag up was wild. And then the following year, they fucking flew to Toad's place. Like they flew from Switzerland to Toad's place, which was, again, very wild, So it was a cool, very cool moment for me. I still have that picture. I look at it from time to time. I post it on my IG on and off. I bring it out of the archives, to post that here and there. So that was a cool moment.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Connecticut too, because I don't think I've had, Anoyd's been on. I've had a lot of people that are prideful of Connecticut, but I know that you're very prideful of Connecticut.
Fuck yeah.
If someone doesn't know about Connecticut, what's something you could tell them right now?
People spend a lot of money out here, right? Like they do spend a lot of money, but it's a very small market. You know what I'm saying? So what people don't realize is it's very small and it's very diverse. The gap between you hear about how rich Connecticut is, right? That's fucking 10%. The other 90% is not rich. So there's very big, you go from like super wealthy hedge fund to super poor projects within 30 minutes of each other. You know what I'm saying? So, but Connecticut is also considered a tastemaker market. We're in between Boston and New York. Radio plays a big part out here. Hot 93 and Buck, they're responsible for breaking like dozens of huge records and big art. Akon will always say like he'll give credit to Buck for breaking him. There's tastemaker markets across the country. Charlotte's one of them. San Diego's another one. Milwaukee's one, where they basically use these markets to test the records for the markets around it. So Connecticut is instrumental in in that sense, where like even too when you needed to know if an artist could perform, you would send them to Connecticut, because Connecticut, they play the wall unless they really, really fuck with you. And that's how a lot of these rappers knew they had something and labels knew they had something, was because they would come to Connecticut and people would show out for them. If you didn't show out in Connecticut, they probably wouldn't even be interested in you.
Yeah.
You know, there was a very big, and that's why too a lot of these like street rappers can do shows here for the rest of their lives, because you know it's kind of that type of market. If you came early on, that was another thing too, is early on Connecticut didn't get shit. We were a highway moving through from New York to Boston, and they would never really, we didn't have a lot of big clubs. We didn't have a commercial radio station. You know, we didn't have a real radio station until 2000 when Hot 93 came along. Prior to that, it was a couple of AM stations. So we were very late on the bus when it comes to like commercial music. But it was so split in half, you know, because from New Haven on was very influenced by New York. You know what I'm saying? And then like, you know, from Hartford up was very, you know, they were kind of Massachusetts guys. You know what I'm saying? So it was a weird time, but also a cool time because it was, you know, people discovering hip hop in Connecticut, which was pretty wild.
Yeah. Speaking of discovering hip hop in Connecticut, at what point do you connect with Anoyd?
Kind of the same type of scenario with Mook and Fair. I mean, even kind of with Webb, but I've known Pace forever. So Pace is my partner, his other manager, and Pace was a rapper himself. So this is going back like Mook and Fair, and Pace, and Oscar Black, and Opium Black, and there was so many, Far City, there was so many dope kind of like local artists from around the way. And Pace had hit me one day, this is probably 2016, early 2017, was like, yo, this kid Anoyd, and I was like, like cool. Like I had never even listened to him. I was like, cool. Thanks, but I loved Pace and respected Pace, and I knew Pace knew what he was talking about, and Pace kind of like left being an artist to get into the business. And then Webb was opening for Chance the Rapper at CCSU, and Anoyd is on that bill, opening a couple artists before Webb. And Anoyd spits this like 100-bar a cappella freestyle, and it was wild, it was crazy. And that night I was like, oh, he's dope, but even still, I was like, like he can rap, you know, but I was very much a product of like major label system at that point. So like rapping didn't impress me. You needed like everything else. I was out on tour. I don't even think I was out on tour. I think I was just away somewhere. I might have been at South by Southwest. I came back, and for like a week I was hearing this Liquor Stains record on the radio. And I was like, who the fuck is this? I really fucked with the record. And then I Shazammed it, and it was Anoyd. I called Pace like within 60 seconds. It was like, yo, put me on a team. You know what I'm saying? So and Anoyd to me is like probably the most talented artist overall I've ever worked with when it comes to musical content. He's like fucking incredible.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I had him on and we were talking about just some of his like, his lyricism is just
it's next level,
unmatched, dude.
And even too with melodies and being able to make big. It's hard to find a hybrid like him. I use like to me he's Tory Lanez on steroids. He's Joey Badass on steroids. Like he's Kendrick and Cole with like Tory mixed in. It's hard to find like a hybrid who's very good at everything. Like Tory could rap when he wanted to, but he was incredibly melodic, right? So he was very good at being melodic, and like he was good at rapping. Anoyd is as good at being melodic as he is at rapping, which is scary. Which is also the reason like a lot of labels kind of didn't know what to do with him. We sat at every major label and had meetings with everybody and had deals on the table with everybody. But it was this odd scenario where like the labels were bringing him in because he could rap, and then when he started playing music, they were big records, and they were kind of just like, what the fuck? They didn't really know how to handle it. So it was a hiccup for him early on, but I think now he's really figured out his lane and how to kind of tie both of them together, so. Yeah,
I want to talk to like artists that are on the come up right now, because you've been through every adapted
phase.
Every phase, dude.
The tapes to CDs to like digital downloads to ringtones to streaming, physical. It's a long time.
What's something that artists should be doing like right now?
Content, dude. It's just, we've had this conversation. It's really just content. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a handful or a very small percentage that can kind of like drop an album a year or drop this and kind of, move it around and work it and it works for them. But you just need a ton of fucking content. Like whether it's on IG and it's Facebook or it's streaming, you need music, videos, short form content. There's really no other way, especially being on the come up or being independent. Like without money, the only way to gain exposure is to continue to drop content. And even, before I used to say like, don't put a record out unless you have the money to push it. It's not like that anymore because now it's all based on an algorithm. So I just think content, like fucking content. And, also too, it's a very long process. There's a very small portion of people that it happens for. I mean, I don't know if it's the same, but, a handful of years ago, there were 2 million demos a year being submitted to labels.
That's crazy.
And on average, they signed 17 people.
Wow.
To major label deals in hip hop, not rock and all that. I mean, even when you go, I implore you to go look at like Interscope's artist list. There's fucking 300 artists.
Oh,
and you've never heard of 250 of them. Like the music industry is a write-off, right? Like Universal and Sony and Warner Brothers, they use music as a tax write-off. They lose hundreds of millions of dollars every year purposely so that they can write it all off and make money with TV and media. You know what I'm saying? So they sign artists just to use them as tax write-offs. So, it's a very small portion of people that make it. I say all the time, like it's easier to make, more people make the NBA every year in Major League Baseball and NFL and hockey than they do in music. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, something like 65 to 100 new players enter the NBA every year. Maybe it's a little less. I'd say maybe 25 enter mainstream music every year in terms of hip hop, but even in terms of the totality, I mean, you're talking maybe 75 people, 100 people a year. Your odds are very low, and I think that's a big misconception too, is when people talk about like what someone's doing wrong or doing right or why doesn't something happen, and especially in terms of like Connecticut, it's like people just forget that this shit is just difficult. It is not fucking easy. Like, even if you're doing all the things right, you could not make it. I know rappers that have spent millions of dollars not made it. I know rappers who have spent no money and made it. I know rappers who have put in 10 years and then it happened, or put in 10 years and it never happened. So there's no real rhyme or reason. You just need like a whole set of stars to align all at once. And if I could give advice, I would say, be prepared for your moment. Because the worst thing, I mean, even with Mook and Fair, when Who's Your Daddy got big, they had no other music like that. They had a bunch of mixtape stuff. And fans were like, who are these guys with this great big kind of pop-ish record? And then they were listening to drug records. They would go search for them and there was nothing, you know what I'm saying? Even image-wise, Who's Your Daddy was like a big crossover record. And then they go look up pictures and they had big, huge diamond chains and baggy clothes, like they were ready as people and as artists for the moment, but internally they were not ready for the moment, like samples and, being registered correctly and BMI and being able to be paid correctly. And those things were not ready. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think like internally you just have to be ready for your moment. I think a ton of people get opportunities. I think that most people drop the ball, and it's not a discredit to anybody. It's difficult, right? But you have to be ready for your moment. I mean, look at like Nems, right? Like he was a rapper for forever and nobody really knew him outside of his small core base. And then boom, he's viral, right? Like, but he was ready for that moment, right? Like he had merchandise, his business was set up. He was working another job at the time. He was a garbage delivery guy. You know what I'm saying? Like he was ready for his moment and he capitalized on his moment. But a lot of artists drop the ball because being prepared for something you can't see is not easy.
Do you have any advice to how people can prepare for that moment?
I mean, take 6 months off of doing anything and just like register with BMI or ASCAP, register with Sound Exchange, figure out how pay scales work, right? Like find a good distribution company. Make sure that you own your content. Make sure that you own the beat, or at least a part of the beat. Make sure you have paperwork. Make sure that your producers are going to get paid. And, you know, like, I think in setting up internally, making sure your socials match, making sure you're monetizing on your socials. Like, you know, you do all of this stuff and you're not prepared for the moment, or you're not prepared to make money. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if your record goes viral tomorrow, but you don't own the record? Then what? You can't get paid. You're getting millions of streams and you can't get paid. So I think, like, a lot of times artists, independent artists will hit me and we'll have a conversation, and the first thing I'll tell them is, like, take 90 days and don't do anything but figure out your internal shit. You know what I'm saying? Figure out your branding, you know, get Shopify, like, be ready with a site, get a website, you know, make sure your socials match. It sounds like redundant stuff and small stuff, but if you're not set up to get paid, you can't make money. You know what I'm saying? So I just think, like, internally going through all the stuff that most artists don't think about to get right are the things that you have to do first. And if you've already have this buzz, or you already have been spending money, then shut it all down for a minute and go back and get your shit together, you know, because you can't do anything. You can't even hire people to correctly move around for you. You know, like, people will want to hire me to do X, Y, and Z, and it's like, dude, you're not even ready. I can't even do my job for you yet. Like, what you're asking me to do, I can't do for you because you're not set up correctly. So, like, if I get you this record deal tomorrow, then what?
Yeah, if you don't know how to move, it's useless.
You have, you know, if you don't have a lawyer, if you don't have an accountant, if you don't, you know, like, you don't need all those things right away. But, you know, I remember getting a phone call for the Snopra deal. She didn't have a lawyer yet. The Busta sample wasn't cleared yet. You know, like, there was no real paperwork on the record. You know, like, I remember going back and forth with her and Shump and setting that up with a lawyer and helping them try to get the sample clear. Because, again, a label signs you, and then, again, you don't own the rights to your record, and you can't get any streams. You can't make money off of all these radio spins. You have to be set up correctly. So,
yeah. And I think something that you brought up too is that a team, like building a team around you.
Fuck yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Can we talk about building a team, like, you know, what you look for in team members?
I mean, I don't know. Everyone I've ever found kind of came organically. It's hard to pinpoint somebody and just, like, hire them to do something, especially if you don't have the money. So, like, for me, you have to understand who you're hiring or who you want on your team. So I've put people on my team that I knew just wanted a check, which is fine. But my expectation of them is that they just want a check and they're going to do what I'm hiring them to do. And then you also want to try and find some people that are not looking for money or not worried about it. So, you know, like, I'm at a point in my career now, like, where if I do work for you, I don't need your $2,000 or $5,000 or $500. That it's not about the money to me anymore, because now I make plenty of money. You know, so for me, if I come on board to do something with you, it's bigger than just a check, right? So, like, you know, you also have to find people who actually believe in you. You know, the difference between finding somebody who, like, wants to ride a coattail versus someone who, like, legitimately believes in you. Like, I worked for Anoyd for years with no money. You know, with Webb, even though Webb was making money, he was making a ton of money for a kid his age. It was all going back into him. So, like, I wasn't getting a monthly payment or a weekly payment for 4 years. You know, like, they would, you know, Dana and Webb, they would pay my bills on a credit card. That's how they would pay me. You know what I'm saying? But I believed in Dana and I believed in Webb and I believed in what they were doing. You know, so I put my best foot forward all the time, you know? So I would just say, like, you know, trust your gut and understand what you're looking for and understand the expectation. I think a lot of people just have these wild fucking expectations. You know, it's part of the reason I've gotten myself into a ton of trouble, you know, is, like, people have this expectation of me. They think I can just, like, you know, and, like, flick a switch and I can get you a deal, or I can get you this, or I can get you that. It's not that easy, you know, and I think people need to dial back their expectations. Even, you know, when I hire someone to do something, I just expect them to do that. right?
Yeah.
And like nothing outside of that. You know, I got myself in a lot of trouble early on, middleman. I don't middleman anymore, like ever. You know, like even with you, I try to tell you, like, I'll plug you, you know, because like I got myself in a ton of trouble. But at the time, those times I was middlemaning because I needed to make money. So like I would take whatever the percentage was to middleman. But I also found myself in a ton of shit because when shit don't go right, and in music, you know, like nothing goes right.
Yeah,
like,
it's part of the game.
You know, like I was the fall guy because I was, you know, even, listen, when Webb and Dana hired me, they hired me to take the fall for everything. Webb will tell you, like, I've been the guy taking the brunt of shit for him for years. You know what I'm saying? Like, but as a manager or as, you know, someone, that's my job, is to be a dick or to take the fall, you know what I'm saying? And to not make the artist look bad or, you know, so a large portion of my career was just like a lot of misconception and expectations weren't met. And again, like I would have artists call me and like get mad. You're not doing the same thing for me that you do for Mook and Fair. You're not doing the same thing for me that you do for Anoyd. You're not doing the same thing for me. They're all different situations. I'm also, you know, some of these artists would pay me $500 or $1,000 a month. I'm not your manager. You hired me to do
a job.
You know what I'm saying? And then even too, when there's been scenarios where like I've been hired to work a record and then you don't get me the record in time and then I can't move the record around to these blogs appropriately. So then you don't get the look you're looking for and then you blame me. But I didn't get the record on time. But I'm always going to be the one to eat shit. You know what I'm saying? There was another artist that hired me to do some stuff with WorldStar, and I get the videos up on WorldStar because I was very close with Q for a long time. And then that artist starts buying bots. You know, and then Q hits me and is like, yo, why the fuck is somebody buying fake views on our page? And then he rips all the videos down off WorldStar. And then that guy lost $5,000. And then he's running around telling people that Chris Fury stole $5,000. You know what I'm saying? And it's I didn't do that. This same artist, KP, the owner of Dat Piff, was also a friend that I made via Webb and Dana. He buys this whole homepage, skin, rotators, advertising cuffs, countdowns, spent like $10,000. First day the mixtape drops, second day it's out, this kid starts buying bots on Dat Piff. KP calls me and is like, dude, I'm pulling all his music down and he's banned. $10,000 gone. You know, and then this guy's doing interviews talking about Chris Fury fucked it. Wait, what? You know, like that didn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah, dude. And the thing is, when you're buying bots and fake numbers, like not only is it a bad look and ruins relationships like how you just explained, but it also does nothing for your career.
No, it does nothing. But you know, there was like this weird point in time where like social media and streaming was starting to happen and you needed it to look away in order to even get a conversation. It was like it was like a very weird moment where like, we're still there, but not as much so. But we're like, if you didn't have X amount of downloads or views, you had nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like radio didn't do it anymore and physicals didn't cut it anymore. So you had to have these numbers. But there's also a way to fluff something versus just like, oh, you have 18,000 downloads and fucking 461 listens. Like,
and then it drops off to nothing.
You know? So I was middlemaning a lot for a while, and I tried to stop. I really don't do that anymore because I got myself into a ton of trouble, you know. Even when I was doing mixtapes, man, I was running so many mixtapes. Like I was going to meet Clue's mom. Clue's mom runs his mixtapes to this day. And I used to go meet Clue's mom at night and I used to run and get a bunch of mixtapes. But I had so many mixtapes at one point that like I was dropping off 10 CDs and stores couldn't pay me for 10 CDs. So I'd get paid for, you know, Camilo and Whoo Kid, and then I wouldn't get paid for Big Mike or Corrupt or Craig G. And then the next time I went, I'd pick up money for those Chubby Chub, and then Chubby Chub's money would go to Craig G, and Craig G's money would go to Whoo Kid, and Whoo Kid's, you know, because it was just this overlapping, you know, never-ending story of tapes. So, you know, I try to keep myself out of those scenarios now at this point in my career.
And one thing about music is that if you're in this game, you actually have to treat it like a job.
Fuck yeah. A lot of people don't. Listen, I have this conversation and I feel like Anoyd finally got it recently, but like you got to wake up in the current day and you got to spend 4 to 5 hours a day on social media, and you got to spend 2 to 3 hours on emails and researching and looking for beats or contacting your homies or hitting up producers or other artists, or, you know, you have to put in 8, 9, 10 hours, 12 hours a day and treat this shit like a job. And it's difficult to treat something as a job while you're at home and you can go do whatever you want and drive around, you know what I'm saying? Like, but one thing for me is I always put in time and work and effort. Like I never sat back and try to make something come to me. You know, I never asked for no favors. I never went on social media and cried about not getting help. You know what I'm saying? Like I just went and got it. But, you know, some people just don't have that, you know, but which is also why building yourself a team of people that can do that for you. There's a lot of artists that don't have certain things in them, but you build around that. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, you still have to find people that believe in you. But Dana was incredibly good at like building a relationship, but he was terrible at continuing it. This is at one point. It's not now, but at one point. So, you know, Dana wasn't good at closing. He was good at opening. You know, he was the guy that got you to the 5th inning and he couldn't get you to the 9th inning. You know what I'm saying? So they literally brought me in to be a closer.
ABC, dude.
Yeah, I'm a fucking savage. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, I have that part in me. You know, for me, I also lack certain skills. You know, like I can build a relationship, but I'm not very good at carrying it in the middle part because my communication sucks because I do so much. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, finding your niche. That's something I love that Webb does. Is Webb now, when he restructured his business, he kind of like took everything off everybody's plate and then assigned people to be good at what they were good at. And it allows you to function and to, you know, come into your own and to be great because you don't have to do all these other things. You know what I'm saying? So like there's a guy who does this and a guy who does this. As a manager, you know, you have to do 10, 15, 18, 20, 30 things. You can't describe your job to somebody, right? It's like an everyday whirlwind of shit. So, but now with Chris, because he hires people and puts people in place to do all the small things that would normally make me lack in everything I was good at, now I can just be great for him at all times because he only wants these 5 things from me instead of wanting 20 things from me. You know what I'm saying? So it allows you to be great when you don't have to deal with all the excess shit.
Yeah, if there's an artist out there that's like super green to the industry, what's a red flag that they should look out for?
Percentages. Just like percentage, you know, we're moving in a direction now where percentages are not the same as they used to be, right? Because the pie isn't that big. When you had 18 or 20% of 10 million, that's not a bad percentage. Now, when you have 18% or 20% of 1 million, that's a much smaller lump sum of money, right? So, like, I think percentage is one. I think two, anybody that you don't know face to face like that. How many people are in your inbox and your DMs and you're getting spam messages and you're getting, you know what I'm saying? Like people who can't tell you the first thing about your music or who you are. You know, Suicide Boys, when Dana first got on with them, I started to like help him a little bit with some press stuff. And I went to the city with him and I was moving around the labels and they were taking meetings. And yo, these dudes were so fucking smart. Like they were sitting in meetings and they're offering millions of dollars to these kids. And they would be like, oh, so what song do you like besides, you know, these 2 songs that everybody likes? And if the fucking label even stuttered, yo, these motherfuckers would walk out of the meeting and just leave me and Dana in the middle of the meeting.
I mean, I respect it, dude.
You know, like finding out if somebody knows you or wants to be in business with you isn't difficult. Like if I came here and you asked me the same 10 questions that everybody else asked me, I would think differently of you when you're asking me about shit that I barely remember. You know what I'm saying?
I did my homework, dude.
But and I think anybody who wants to do business with you is going to do their homework, right? Like I watch Gary Vee a lot, and Gary Vee says the people he pays attention to are the people that tell him about things that he didn't even realize happened, but remembers them. And he's like, wait, this guy's been legit watching me, or, he knows about a business meeting that I talked about 12 years ago, or, you know what I'm saying? If someone can't tell you where you're from, or they can't tell you, what the name of your album is, or, they're not interested in you.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you want somebody, if you're going to bring someone a part of your team at that scale, they got to care.
They got to care. They have to care. There has to be, and, that's also I talk about finding somebody, in a space where, they're not chasing money. Money makes people do fucked up shit.
Agreed.
No matter how good of a person you are. You could be an incredible person, but when you don't have anything, you do wild shit, which is why I never judge anybody for doing wild shit, because if I was in a position where I needed to feed my daughter, or I needed, I was getting evicted, or, you're going to do some wild shit
to make it happen.
As you should. I don't want to say you should do fuck shit, but as a person, you got to figure it out. And sometimes how you figure it out is not the right way. You know what I'm saying? So, finding people who are not money driven, finding people that care about you, or that, or at least see your vision. The other part is it's hard to make someone recognize your vision. How many times have you seen something so clear in your head, and you're talking to someone and they're just like, I don't see it.
All the time, dude.
You know what I'm saying? But
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, people think different. And, even when it's, you hear things that even, especially out here, and you're like, oh, people in Connecticut don't support you until they see you on TV. Dude, that's fucking everything.
Yeah, dude.
I don't support a product. I don't even realize I do it. But I didn't support a certain headphone until I fucking seen the headphone on someone that made it click. You know what I'm saying? So it's and everything you do, it takes something different for everyone to notice you. You know what I'm saying? So people have a misconception that someone doesn't support, or they wait until you're on. Dude, no one bought Yeezys until Yeezy started to pop off, until it became a thing. Nobody was buying Jordan super early on until he was dunking over people. It's
I got a message I live by that maybe you can talk on a little bit, but nobody owes you shit.
No, fuck no. I say that shit all the time. And, you see, especially out here, you see people being there's gatekeepers, and, you should do more, and you should. Nah, dog, no one has to do a fucking thing for you. And anyone who does feel very blessed and feel very happy that they did that. Listen, you push me to try and get things done for you, and I do some things, and some things I don't, right?
But you crush it, dude, when you do,
Right,
but I know you're extending yourself to a million other people.
You also, too, don't, if something doesn't come through or something doesn't happen, you don't get mad at me for it.
Oh, yeah, because you don't owe it to me, dude. If you're doing anything, it's just out of the kindness of your art,
and really nobody owes you shit. And again, too, people's opinions are based on, people don't realize how much I've done personally for so many artists that no one's ever heard about. And I mean that just in terms of advice, or consulting, or getting them flyers, or linking them with someone, or getting them a show, or getting them a feature. It's so deep. And again, too, in my line of work, you don't get credit for shit. I have a hard time, even too much, you know me, I'm very aggressive, right? And I think a lot of that comes from not being appreciated, because my job is the least appreciated fucking job on earth, right? You don't get the shout out, you're not seen, you're not in pictures, you're not in videos, you and then you do a whole bunch of stuff, and you get a thank you.
Yeah.
Right? So my personal life has struggled because of this, you've seen me post lately about the business being toxic and all of this other shit. And the farther I step back, the more I realize. But, it's played a big part in who I am, because what happens is when I say something, or I offer something, or I do something, and I don't feel like someone believes me, or I don't feel like someone is understanding me, I get aggressive, because for years and years and years and years, I've been overlooked, or not been thanked, or not been appreciated. You know what I'm saying? even you've done more favors and more discounts on videos and all these things, you know, and you get like a cool thank you, but do you really feel like appreciated by 80% of those people?
It's a mixed bag sometimes. But you know what I will say to this whole thing is like maybe I won't be appreciated, but I've gained everyone's respect. And I think that's something you have too.
I mean, listen, it's the reason that some people who have something to say will still call me or still need me for something. I think everyone respects what I do. Not everyone likes me. But I've also done some dumb fuck shit, right?
Yeah.
But that's also, listen, Dana and Webb did some fuck. Everybody does some fuck shit. When you look at how this industry is built, an artist gets signed that's uneducated for the most part, and then that person brings a homie and a homie and a homie and a homie, and it's a bunch of uneducated people in this multi-billion-dollar business just trying to figure it the fuck out because there's no school for it. So you just have to figure it out.
Yeah. You know that I appreciate you, right?
I do.
Dude, you've seen the cover of Crazy? Like
yeah.
the one you know that you're on there, right?
No.
Yeah, dude.
Really?
Bro, I sent this to you a year ago and you were on the cover and you didn't say anything about it. So I was waiting for a moment like right now to bring it up that you're on the cover.
I didn't even know that.
I'm trying to find I'm looking around for my phone really.
That's crazy. Why did I not know that?
Well, I didn't tell you.
Well, first and foremost, let me tell you, when I first seen all this artwork, I literally hit you and was like, this is the most incredible shit I've ever seen.
So if you zoom in right, you're the only photo that's of this 50 States project.
Oh my God. I never even noticed that. And I've looked at this fucking thing 100 times.
Yeah, I know. And you didn't say anything about it. So I was like,
wait, I'm not even a cartoon.
No, you're the only photo that's going to be on any of these covers.
That's
dude.
Amazing. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I said, when I told Jose, I was like, yeah, you got to use this photo, but it's going to be the only real photo.
Wait, I Spy. I'm going to see. Now I'm going to post this.
That's mad funny, dude.
That's fire.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I wanted to show that to you, but I got a few more questions and then we'll take it to the end zone.
Cool.
So, you know, let's talk real quick. Do you have a music industry nightmare story that you could talk about?
There's so many. There's so many. I mean, like, in terms of, that's such a broad question because there's like almost a nightmare every day, but like some very terrible nightmares, you know? Like,
yeah, what's one that like stands out that you didn't think you were going to bounce back from?
I won't say that I didn't think I was going to bounce back from that. There was recently, not recent, but a few years ago, I was helping another big name in Connecticut with another artist, a local guy. He had a son that was like young, really trying to make it happen, like great individuals. And, you know, I was middlemaning a deal, putting a deal together, and then, you know, a bunch of delays, a bunch of not getting a sample cleared and not having a feature cleared. And, you know, there was a $10,000-ish. There was a good amount of money at stake, and like the money got lost. You know, it was not all for nothing, and it happened to some like really good people, and it was my fault because I put it together, but not my fault because I didn't take any money. I sent the money off. I didn't make any money. I didn't make any bad decisions. I just, you know, I was in the middle of middlemaning something. There was a lot of other shit going on with the artist, you know, and then it also kind of messed my relationship up with somebody in Connecticut who I've been close with from the beginning, you know, like someone that people tie us together, you know what I'm saying? And we don't talk anymore, you know, so I don't want to say I didn't think I was going to bounce back, but that scenario hurt my feelings, you know what I'm saying? And
it's tough, dude.
And I still think about it, you know, and trying to make it right outside of just like paying mad money back that I didn't necessarily lose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but that, and I think, you know, after the Ray J scenario, I was kind of like, fuck, man, like, what am I going to do now? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, even with Mook and Fair, we were at a point where, like, what do we do now? And then, like, Shipes and D and Shadow come in and, like, save the day, you know?
It's funny how things happen, you know?
With Webb, I mean, when Webb fired Dana and basically his entire fucking team, and he never fired me, it was that I was partners with Dana. And there was, like, this weird year where, like, me and Webb didn't even really talk. And I didn't know, I was like, damn, like, now what? You know, like Dana was trying to figure it out and I was trying to figure it out. And, you know, I also didn't want to go back to like just straight mainstream artists because being on the independent side of things has made me not like the other side of it. You know, it showed me a different world. So there's been quite a few scenarios where like I didn't know what I was going to do, but there's always one thing that I know, and I know I can make something happen anywhere. So
yeah, and one thing that my biggest takeaway from all the interviews, all the things I did preparing for this, is that you have always been passionate about music.
Yeah, always.
Regardless of what era, you know, whatever technology was there.
Yeah.
Like, music was just always something that kept you going.
I've always given a shit. I've given a shit about music, and I've also given a shit about people in music because I understand how difficult it is, and I understand how people get, you know, distraught, and you know they don't want to do it anymore, or you know they don't understand it, or don't. You know, I'm still. Listen, I think I know publishing, and every day I find out I really don't know shit about publishing. You know what I'm saying? So I've always taken pride in like trying to teach people and mentor people, and you know, like trying to help where I can. I try to help too many people.
Yeah,
you know,
but always learning too, and always adapting.
Fuck yeah, I learn every day. You know, and adapting is a huge part of the process. You know, like, you know, the industry itself is like 5 years behind everything. It's just corporate stuff in general. Like if you're, you know, you work in any corporate level, because of the corporate red tape and billing cycles and tons of employees and write-offs and expenses, and it takes a minute. So like by the time tapes went out, CDs were in, right? And by the time the industry caught up to CDs, digital download or ringtones were in. And by the time the industry caught up to ringtones, digital downloads were in. And by the time they caught up to digital download, you know what I'm saying? So it's even now, like the labels are catching up to streaming, and we're about to be in a different realm. Like, you know, I think streaming is, I don't mean streaming is going to be dead, but I think it's going to change dramatically in the next like 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Maybe 3. Yeah.
And I think this would be a disrespectful podcast if I didn't bring up Fancy Bagel Express.
Man, Fancy Bagels, we have a good fucking bagel. We have a great
dude.
Bagel. We won Best Bagel in Connecticut last year, and I'm about to send you the link because we're up for it 2 years in a row now.
Oh, so, let's go, dude.
Yeah, let's go. But yeah, no, that came out of COVID happened, right? And like I make a lot of my money on the road, and I wasn't sure if we were ever going to go back on the road or if touring was going to come back or what was going to happen. And I was talking to my girl, and she always wanted to do like a coffee shop, or, you know, she kind of wanted to stop working the 9-to-5 shit too. And we were kind of talking about opening a coffee shop. And when COVID happened, we were like, you know, this is kind of the best time to like figure it out if we really want to do this or not. And originally we were just going to do a coffee shop. Now I grew up going to Fancy Bagels. As a kid, they've been the top bagel place where I'm from for forever. And the dude who owns it is like a distant cousin of mine. So I seen him on Facebook one day talking about wanting to open another location, you know, and I shot him a DM and was like, oh, I was going to open a coffee shop. And he's like, you want to open a Fancy? So I did, and it's been incredible. I mean, I never did anything in the restaurant world or anything with food ever. And it's been better than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, dude. And so for people that don't know, I did a little promo video with Connecticut Bucket List, my friend Kathleen.
She's awesome, FYI. Shout out to her.
Yeah, dude. I still get hit up
People come in and legitimately, like, you know, once or twice a month.
I got recognized recently. I was with my girl, and he was like, I know you. And of course, I'm like, oh, he knows the music, finally. Today's my big day. He's like, bacon, egg, and cheese. And I was like, damn it.
No, I get people that come in and ask for the Squire special, man. That video, you know, did like 250,000 views on IG.
Dude, it's like, way past that now. I peeped it recently. It's like, yeah, because I still get hit up about it.
I go back to it.
I think it's like 500,000, dude.
That's crazy. Yeah, but TikTok, it did really well. And dude, the other part is too, is I think that like, and this falls back to the music thing, is you have to be prepared and like figure out how to diversify your money. Right?
Yeah,
like,
no, that's real, dude.
And I think like when I was thinking about opening something up, I was thinking about, you know, life after music and like something my daughter can do and that, you know, or somewhere she can work and something I can leave to her. And, you know, so like and also too, being involved in a community is big for me at this point in my life. Like being involved in a community and doing stuff for where I'm from is important. So I had the opportunity and I took it, and it's been fucking incredible. There is a lot of money in bagels. People love breakfast, you know, and people love bagels. Bagels is kind of like, it's top 5 most consumed foods in the country. It's pizza, burgers, French fries, bagels.
I believe
you know
it,
what
dude.
I'm saying? So there's bagel wars, and people get caught up on their bagel shit, you know. So, but we have a good breakfast. I take pride in it. It's also cool, you know, because I come from a marketing side, so it's been a little easier for me to navigate where a lot of small businesses struggle in terms of trying to like put their word out. I haven't. It's been easy for me in that sense. So
The application of hustling mixtapes has applied to hustling bagels.
dude, that was the best era of music for me.
Yeah,
was mixtapes, dude. It was the most
It's different
incredible.
now, dog.
Yeah, it's different. It's very
But
different.
what's Chris Fury's message to the world, dude?
Jesus.
Heavy one, I know.
That's a heavy one.
I had to drop it real quick, though.
I don't know, man. My messages to the world, I think, change yearly, because as I get older and as I see more shit, different things tend to matter to me that didn't before. Man, I would just say, like, be yourself. You know, like, one thing I respect about you is in your music journey, you've never tried to be anybody but Mike Squires, ever.
It's the truth, dude.
You know, like, you've never tried to be cool. You never tried to adapt to some other shit. You've never tried to wear some shit that wasn't you. You know, like, being yourself is important, one. And two, I think that, you know, finding what makes you happy and what your description of success is very important, right? Because, like, you know, some people might say, like, oh, dude, you're not that successful. Like, you don't work for P. Diddy, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, well, your measurement of success might be what you want to see on TV, and you may think it's J. Cole or it's Kendrick or it's whoever, you know, but my level of success, to me, I've surpassed everything I've ever wanted to do. You know, like, I would love to see Webby be bigger, and I would love to see Anoyd be bigger, but outside of that, like, I've done some of the most incredible, I've been to 69 countries in all 50 states, dude. Whew. You know, like, I've done a lot of shit from music. I've been in rooms with people that I had no business being in rooms with, you know, like, I have some cool stories and some cool relationships, and, you know, I think, like, finding your own happiness and finding your own success and, like, being who you are super important, and, you know, figuring out what you want out of life or out of the scenario you're in is super important. So that would be my message.
That was very well said, Fury.
You know,
My last question.
Uh-oh.
What's next for Chris Fury?
More bagel shops, for sure. I'm going to continue to try and, you know, get Webb where he wants to be. I'm going to continue to try to get Anoyd where he wants to be. I'm kind of past the wanting to manage new artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm down to help, you know, peace and fucking relaxation and, like,
Well deserved.
yeah, that's my goal. My goal is to, like, be happy and open some more shops and, like, see the people that I already work with bring their dreams to fruition, and, like, that's it for me, man. You know, like, I quality of life is super important. So moving forward, quality of life for me is important. You know, so that's what's next for me.
Yeah. And if people wanted to connect with you, how could they?
IG's Chris Fury _, same on Twitter, same on Facebook. You know, they can reach out whenever, and I'm always down to chop it up and shoot the shit and give advice and plug people. And I'm not looking for no handouts. I don't need no money. I don't, you know, they have people hit me up and ask me how much it costs, like, for a meeting. And it's like, fucking people are really charging people for meetings. You know, so I'm past all that point. But yeah, you could reach out whenever, you know, like, I'm around.
Yeah. Well,
I've had the same number since 1998, dog.
that's actually a fun fact, dude.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Same
Do you find,
number.
real quick, do you find that somebody from back then will still hit you? And
Absolutely.
Amazing.
That's why I don't change my number.
Yeah.
Listen, you know, in the music business, you miss one phone call that can
It could
change
be
your
the
life.
call, dude.
Listen, that's the lure of music, I think, is, like, at any moment, your whole life could change. And I mean, like, within 24 hours. You know, it could just completely change.
That's all my opportunities have. It's just a random phone call most of the time.
So I've never changed my number for that reason, because I've always been scared of like missing a call, or like, you know, somebody trying to contact my artist back, or, you know, listen, I'll never forget, I gave my number to Jimmy Iovine when I was probably 23, and he called me in 2017.
Yeah.
Still had my number in his phone. And like the most random call, you know, like I seen an LA number. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, which is 10 there. And I pick up and he's like, hey, this is Chris Fury. And this is Jimmy Iovine. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, but if I would have changed my number, I would never have got that call. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a firm believer in like consistency and like making yourself available, you know, like I'm around pretty much at all times. You can figure out how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Fury, thank you for coming on the Mike Squires and Friends podcast, dude.
I appreciate it.
This is a good one, dude.
That was some good questions, dude.
A lot of gems.
I'm impressed.
Thank you, man.
My man.
I really tried. Let's go.
Good shit.
Thank you, dude.
Yes, sir.
I want to share with you guys my thought of the day. And my thought of the day is this. If you're planning to be a creative or an entrepreneur, you got to treat it like it's a job. If you want those next level results, you got to put in the time. Don't expect full-time results with a half-time effort. Chris Fury's experience in the music industry stood the test of time, and I believe that's because of his resilience and his ability to adapt. The change in your life starts with you. Remember, you got to believe in yourself before the world does.